Welcome to another episode of Data Gurus. I am Sima Vasa, your host, and I'm excited to welcome Greg Silverman today, who is the Global Director of Brand Economics at Interbrand. I love that title, Greg. Sounds very important.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me here. And I lived so long in the analytics industry. When I came back to Interbrand and we called it brand economics, I really felt it captured the essence of what we're really trying to solve here.
Yeah, I totally agree, and we're going to dig into that because it's quite fascinating in terms of where you fit, kind of in terms of the services you offer and what value you bring to clients. But before we do that, I am always interested in a guest's kind of path to getting to where you are today. And so if you could just share with the listeners brief background as to your trajectory to this point in your career.
Sure. I really started in retail of all places in Macy's training program years ago when it was a great program. And I kind of worked my way through consumer goods, franchising, ended up in consulting with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Came to Interbrand. I've been here about 15 years, was here for 11, and then went off and did my own tech startup around
Yep.
data and forecasting. And now back at Interbrand, where I really have had the same conversation for almost 25 years is how do you merge the impact of brand and finance and make that clear to the market and the internal stakeholders and customers?
Fascinating. And have you always been passionate about analytics? Is it something that you studied or is it something you discovered along the way?
I discovered, actually, it's a great question because I took a business calculus course in grad school, and they were
Okay.
like, "You should make this your life's work." And I was really an HR major because
Wow.
I was interested in people and organizational development, and that was my focus. And having tried that as a consultant for a long time, I realized if you couldn't change the trajectory of money, you
Mhm.
couldn't get companies to do good things for good people. But if you could bring them together, you could sleep really well.
That's true. And feel really good about it.
Yeah.
Doing something that's impactful to people's lives and businesses.
Yeah, so I've been on both sides of it, as an independent entrepreneur in corporate setting with a purpose, with pressure to deliver, and really found midway through my career, after I built a company up called California Closets and was part of a team that sold it, that I could do something I was not only passionate about, but I get into what I call the flow state. It's just my
Yeah.
natural state of being,
Yep.
and so the intersection of data and research and forecasting and brands, just been a lucky venture for me.
So let's break it down a little bit. I mean, and we'll talk about the global brand study in a moment, but at the core of it, you're really focused on linking brand to economic value to a shareholder, to a value to the C-suite. Tell us a little bit of how you do that and how you think about it.
Yeah, so I was fortunate that Interbrand invented brand valuation almost 25 years ago, and I've been steward of it for 15 of that 25
Portion of
years.
the time, yeah.
Yeah, and when I got to it, it really started to see that, like, when we look at marketing metrics and data, it's
Right.
often very siloed.
Yep.
What's my cost per click? What's my awareness? And what we've conceived of at Interbrand is a model that shows how all things work together. What are
Okay.
the interaction effects of those different component pieces? And so we've been able to take things like, I'm investing in brand, have a certain type of creative media, and translate that into financial outcomes like EBIT and sales growth and share
Yep.
price, as well as deliver the brand insights. Living at that intersection is our unique place. And sometimes I think it's the only thing I'm really good at.
Well, listen, you mentioned your flow state. I don't think a lot of people have found their flow state, so that's cool that you found it and you're doing this, which sounds like it's quite interesting and intellectually stimulating. So hats off to you on that because not many people get to do what they love to do.
Thank you for that. And it's a lot. It might sound very organized, but it's a little luck as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And chance, right? I'm not.
I
I didn't
totally
have
get
the
it.
perfect trajectory. It's not a straight
Yeah.
line, but I did get lucky enough to find that.
Yeah. So you guys, Interbrand does this brand study and it launched 25 years ago. This is the 25th year of the study that's going to be
It's actually
going?
the 26th, 25th
25th
anniversary
year.
was last time. And
Okay.
a big part of what we do on that is, we obviously gather financial data and we gather our expertise as a company. The entire company participates, but a big part of what we do for what we call Best Global Brands, which comes out in October, is global research on the role of brand, right? And
Right. That
understanding what that is. And that's kind of how we met, because
yes.
it's an exclusive and exciting notion to Interbrand.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you're using, obviously Paradigm's really excited to be the partnership with Interbrand on this study, but that you're using discrete choice as a core methodology in terms of really trying to understand the role of brand, obviously with the other metrics as well, but it's factual. It's based on real research among appropriate target audiences.
Yeah, and it's been a hallmark for us for almost 2 decades to use discrete choice because you're
Mhm.
actually recreating the notion of some type of trade-off, right?
Right,
And oftentimes you get marketing metrics of intent and consideration and awareness, but it's the probability that the choice in the research instrument reflects market share that
right.
discrete choices has come about for us. And we've been partnering with Paradigm for years on it because you guys have really figured out how to orchestrate that and execute it and deliver it in a fast and clear way. So it's been a
Yes.
wonderful partnership.
Yeah, that's exciting, it really is, and I think it's exciting in terms of, being able to understand who your target audiences are and being able to align the appropriate sampling plan to be able to fulfill those needs and, again, data quality, ensuring that it's all, appropriate and up to standard based on what the agreements and kind of, needs are for each of the studies.
And I think for us, it's really been kind of a value equation, right? Because when you start thinking if you're in brand management or marketing, advertising, oh, I need to go to a big research firm.
Yes.
You really in a way don't need to
Right.
go there, right? Because and we looked at the value added and we're like, between Paradigm and us, there's a value equation that,
Yes.
cuts a lot of cost out, increases speed, and it gets more tailored and nuanced to our client requirements.
Right.
And we've really disaggregated that value chain and said, between Paradigm's automation and
Yeah.
capabilities of finding sampling and our ability to interpret, we're delivering faster, more affordable solutions to clients that you really get to the precise things they
Yeah.
need to go into their CFO from the marketing side and saying, "Hey, investing $50 million here is going to yield this in sales," and that
Yeah.
really is the question of the day.
Yeah, that's exciting. And also I think the other piece is that, you know, the value that you're providing is not necessarily because I think when people think about not going to a large research agency, they think quick and cheap. But you're kind of changing the game here and saying, "Okay, we're really good at this. Paradigm's really good at this, and we could still have incredibly strategic value for clients." And it's yes, it's fast, but it's not like so quick and you can't wrap the analytics and the insights around it to go to the CFO. So the model I
No, that
feel you've changed a bit.
Yeah, it's a great point because I think what leverages our ability is that we have a framework that's been
Yes,
around for 25 years. It's been proven to deliver results. And so once
right.
you have that core bed of knowledge, and for a lot of our clients, they don't have it. So they
Yep,
rely on our database instead of going out and recreating it.
yep.
We can leverage the patterns that we've seen over decades with
Yes.
simpler instruments and higher value deliverables. And that's why our partnership's just like taken off, right? Because people can get to an answer because most people don't know what the role of brand is for their brand. Like
Right. Yeah.
we were working with this tire company, off-road tires, and everybody's like, oh, that's probably 30% of the decision. It was almost in some cases 65% of the consumer's decision
Incredible. Yeah.
was the tire name, and then when you delve into it on a qualitative basis, it's like
Yep.
the styling of the tire. I'm like, this
Right.
is the same as like almost Hermes or
Yeah.
Gucci, right? And that's what people don't understand is
Mm.
how to make that case, and by isolating the role of brand, and that's the partnership we've established
Yeah.
this year globally, is
Right.
you could start making investment cases because you know how much brand is contributing to total enterprise value.
Right. And are there categories that you've seen in the past that, um, obviously there's the CPG, the fast moving kind of fast moving items, but outside of the core verticals that we think of, are there verticals that like, outside of tires that you just mentioned, but other verticals that you're like, people just don't like surprisingly brand plays such an important role that as us as individuals, we would never even think of that.
The first time it really happened to me, because I would have to say I had a naive view, like
Yeah.
uninformed view of the world of brand, was in salt. So I
Oh,
grew up with Morton salt, and for
yeah.
those of us born in the US, it's a blue cylinder with a white
Yeah.
top.
Yep.
And we were doing some work with them, and that we discover that salt has a role of brand that can be very high when it's not in a commodity, right?
Interesting.
Himalayan peak, iodized, and all of
Yes.
a sudden we're like, there's a whole category that you can evolve into
Right.
where the role of brand and the speciality of the salt really is a place where you can create a whole new arena. And so 90% of the time people would say salt, that's just a commodity. But now when we
Right.
look back on it 10 years later, it's not.
Right. Exactly.
Of knowing that role of brand potential across those designed segments you're trying to penetrate creates all kinds of opportunity for revenue growth. And that's
Right.
where obviously we're living as a
Yeah.
team because we're
So
showing people here's where you can put your brand and make money.
right. And the kind of the persona or the type of client that's ripe for this. I know that, we've talked about like here's the ideal type of company that would be ready to kind of embark on understanding the value of brand as they kind of level up to the next level. Can you share a little bit about that? Because you've had so much experience in working with different all kinds of brands, and you've kind of nipped it, like said, okay, this truly is the persona of the company that would benefit from something like this.
It's a great kind of evolution that we've seen in the market, and you're probably not going to walk into Procter and Gamble and have to explain to them the importance of brand, right?
Yeah.
But you can
Exactly.
look at you can look at products that once they have product market fit
Hmm.
and they start to scale, right? So that can be anything from like metering systems for homes, right, and commercial properties, to any kind of tech product. Like once you start to scale, you're looking for that brand component
Mm,
when you're saying, okay, there's only so much I'm going to get out of my performance marketing. I
right.
don't want to give up price. What are the intangible things that I'm delivering that create a brand? Or if I'm not delivering those things, what are those requirements?
Right.
So as I move from more like a scaled up product environment to I'm trying to extend or scale into a branded environment, that transition, we're really good partners for
Yeah.
people in.
Yeah. And they're around 3 billion or they're sizable companies, right? That they've really
Yeah, I think
sizable
people
product.
start to scale on the
Yeah.
product from anywhere from 500 million to
Yeah.
probably before 5 billion. If you're
Yeah.
in that space, you probably getting a CEO from some place that say, "Hey, what's our brand? What's our plan for our brand?" A great job engineering the software or figuring out this product market. But now we need something that's sustainable both for our clients and share of wallet, but also as a
Right.
narrative to potential IPOs or the recently gone public. And in those places, the brand work is really foundational for
Yeah.
increasing keeping the trajectory on the upward scale.
And I love your analogy where you have we talked about this, where you have a CMO who knows they want to invest in brand. You have a CFO who's kind of like, "Huh, not sure if we should do this." And and your research kind of connects the 2 languages together in terms of being able to get people to the table and understand the perspectives of both roles, but then ultimately drive value for the company.
That's right, and we think we've been able to fuse those 2 together so that the CMO really moves a little bit from maybe a backwards looking view that says,
Yeah.
"Hey, here's the reach or the touch points or the likes or clicks," or however you wanna think about it, and says, "I'm gonna take a little bit of a risk or a forward focus on I think if we do this, I can raise sales 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
And the CFO has a chance then to judge how well marketing's doing in market results. And when those two connect at that level,
Yeah.
just one time, all they want to do is connect on it every time, right?
Time.
Because
Right, exactly.
but it
Yeah,
requires that research and insights to make sure you're constantly moving with the
yeah.
market and staying agile and empathetic to customers.
Well, like, and yeah, fact-based, right? Actually
Yeah.
data-driven. Yeah, which makes a
Data
huge
driven, tied to business outcomes. That's
correct.
the new generation. Well,
Yeah.
that's why I'm on Data Gurus.
Right, exactly. Greg, we talk a lot I've talked a lot on the podcast about the changing role of insights, which might be driven from, potentially the agenda of a CMO, right? The role has changed over time, given market dynamics, given the acceleration of technology, data, exactly what we're talking about. What have you seen as the role of, like, from the role of a CMO? What's changed that you've seen over the last 10 years for them?
Yeah, I think more and more the things that we traditionally looked at as marketing metrics are
Yeah.
really just not enough, right?
Okay.
That they have to make some move into higher pricing premiums, sales growth,
Mm,
maybe EBIT, depending on the culture of the organization,
yeah.
and take some ownership outside of paid media and comps,
Got it. It's gotta
right?
tie more to business.
It
Business outcome.
does.
Yeah.
It does, and, a lot of folks, don't have the financial literacy to make that
Mm,
transition, and a lot of the financial people don't have the marketing literacy to make that transition,
right.
and that's kinda where we sit to,
Mm,
like, do a knowledge transfer, and once they understand how it works together,
yeah.
becomes a very dynamic and healthy relationship,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
most of the time it starts with, like, "What?"
Right, right. Then it becomes kind of, um, staking ground instead of being productive to work together.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. So, and I think the people generally need some assistance
Mm,
to get the momentum going, right? Until you build your own internal capabilities, which is
yeah.
mostly what clients end up doing because it becomes more efficient and the
Yeah.
communication becomes more. You need some outside expertise, or at least the role we play is when people need outside expertise to learn and socialize. We tell a lot of our clients for every dollar we bill of like doing analysis, we have 2 to 3 of socialization.
Yeah, of course, yeah, yeah. In fact, I think that's it's such a big part of getting people to understand and grasp the results of the research. I call it the last mile, and so a lot of the times, that last mile, the industry in traditional research probably gives it the least amount of time in terms of socialization.
I think you're right. I just couldn't, and I'm stunned having been around the data research analytics world for almost 3 decades. Even still, we're
Yes,
still reporting out things that are like interesting findings, but aren't making that leap
yeah,
to the interesting outcome. And I
yes,
think that, and given kind of like um, the worry in the world and the instability, being able to get closer to business outcomes faster,
yes,
which is kind of our partnership, right,
yes, yes.
is what I think is going to drive things over the next 2 to 3 years while we figure out what actually is going to take place and hold.
So, results are published in October? Is that right?
Yeah, we would publish every year. Sometimes what people have done is they've looked at our top 100 brands index and said,
Okay.
what if it were a basket of stocks? What
Okay. Yeah.
Right, and they've said, "Okay," and what they've done is compared our our list to, like, the
To
Dow, the S&P, and we outperform them by almost 20%
oh,
with the
interesting.
same kind of risk variability. So what we're
Right,
saying is, you understand the role of brand, you can manage to it, it becomes more resilient, and while there's a lot of short-term vagaries that all of
right.
us are up against,
Seriously?
over
Yeah.
yeah, over time, it outperforms.
Got it. Okay. Well, listen, I'd love to have you back, once the results come back, and we can talk more about what you've learned, and, I'm excited about the partnership with Paradigm. It's gonna be really exciting.
Yeah, we're thrilled. We're so happy to have you all as partners, and we've been working together, kind of arm's length, and now to be one. I feel
Yeah.
like there's be a lot more power in what we can deliver.
Totally agree. Greg, thank you so much for your time today, and, look forward to having you back.
Yeah, look forward to coming back.
All right, cool. Thank you.